I'm Racers Marshall Pruett. That is FIA, Weckety Weck, DailySportsCar.com, Racer, OnlyFans, you name it, Graham Goodwin. We are here. What are we here for? Is this strictly the Mobil 1 12 hours of Sebring, as I see both an ambulance and a gorgeous Cadillac GTP car rolling behind us? That's not just what we're here for, though.
No,
it's cool stuff.
It's super duper Sebring time, and it's the FIWC, now known as the FIA Weckety Weck, and
Yes.
of course the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. I can say that quickly. It's a fabulous festival of motorsport. In particular, the largest gathering so far of new top-class prototypes on the ground right now. 19 cars on site, 8 for the IMSA Championship, 11 this time out for WEC.
8 in GTP, hypercar class, and your series exploding.
More to come in both, and that's really good news. Paddock's buzzing, the fans will be arriving, and they're buzzing about this one. They love this race meeting. Might be the last one we have like this, though. I think it probably is.
Michelin Pilot Challenge is here, Porsche Carrera Cup, remote control cars.
Yes, hot air ballooning.
Vehicle burning and couch burning in the infield. It's a
Swamp
traditional,
buggies.
yes, a traditional Sebring. We're going to get to a little bit of IMSA stuff to close off our Wednesday end of day video. Let's talk about the flow of this weekend or this event, and then also what's been going on in New World and Weckety Weck. So today being Wednesday, we have the WEC on track. IMSA does not get on track until tomorrow, Thursday, with the WeatherTech Championship. Friday, we have this 1,000 miles, 8 hour.
8 hours.
Is it miles or kilometers?
It's miles.
Centimeters? I don't know, whatever it is.
Long.
Yes, we have the Weckety Weck race on Friday, and then we come back Saturday for the traditional 12-hour race. Starts at 10:10 a.m. here, local Eastern. So we're not going to sleep a lot, man.
We're not. It's remarkable, isn't it? When this Super Sebring event was first announced, huge amount of cynicism about this. We're not seeing that at all. From day one, the fans absolutely love this. Getting to see the cars from these two absolutely top-class sports car championships on track, if not together, at least on the same bill. And as far as trackside action is concerned, there's nothing else on the planet that compares to this weekend. Nothing whatsoever. You're right there, Marshall. We've been here for a week already because we've had 2 days of track action for the FIWC Prologue, the traditional 2-day test to start off the season.
Spring training for the WEC, basically.
It is, and we've got a lot of new. And even if we just focus on hypercars, the big story, of course, is the return of Ferrari with the gorgeous 499P, the first factory-run top-class prototype program in 50 years.
And they're not just new. There's a really new one of those.
There's a very
too,
new one.
Right? Tell us about what's been going on.
Yeah, well, one of the big changes, and I fear we'll be talking about this through the whole of the season, is WEC this year moved to a situation where we don't have tyre warmers. Sounds like a small thing, doesn't it? Not according to any of the drivers, and a fair number of them have met with the warming embrace of the wall so far. One of those was James Gallardo, cold tyres on his outlap, a probably ill-advised lunge up the inside of a GTE car into tricky turn 1, and it didn't end well. After a couple of days of looking over what they thought they could deal with on the 51 car, new chassis for that car. That was completed in time for track time today. And what did James Gallardo do? Well, I think he probably had to pull something out of the bag. Top of the times today, and getting down to really competitive times across, for the most part, the factory teams in the FIWEC. Still a little off the two boutique manufacturers, shall we call them. Glickenhaus Racing struggling, no testing between their last appearance at Monza and coming onto track in the prologue here, so their times are a bit off. And the somewhat controversial Van Wall has put in a good time or two in the hands of Tom Dillman. The shock for me is Jacques Villeneuve. He's nowhere. He is literally nowhere. I've not looked at the session times before I've come to talk to camera here, but throughout the prologue, he was at best 2.5 seconds slower than the slowest bronze in LMP2.
Good old Jacques Villanueva.
There you go. It has been a great couple of days track action. We've learned a lot we still don't know. What it's looking like is Toyota look to have the upper hand, probably, although there's some good stuff going around in terms of the long stint pace of one or two of the other cars, I think we've got some really good class action to look forward to in hypercar, and that we've not even mentioned a really deep class in LMP2 and a cracker of a class in the final year of GTE with a deep class of GTMs as well, and some storylines galore there, principally. And if you're keen on following the progress of female drivers coming into and through sports car racing, almost all of them at the top of their times or thereabout. Dorian Pan, third quickest in LMP2 in her debut in the class, and 3 of the top 8 times in GTM in the prologue were female drivers across 2 different cars. We've got some storylines to be giving you over the next weekend.
Amazing stuff. Also, again, just to think we're going to have from noonish Friday through 10 p.m. Saturday night, 20 hours of the greatest endurance racing you're going to find anywhere. Let's talk about IMSA to close. So there's one major theme coming into this event, and it's an unfortunate one, and that was the hammer being dropped on our friends at Meyershank Racing. Overall winners of the Rolex 24 at Daytona, the debuting Acura RX-06 in that GTP class. Learned here just a little while ago, IMSA decreed that they ran out of compliance. They didn't say for how long. I've heard the whole race. I've heard a decent portion of the race. Michelin says for our tires to operate within what we consider to be the safest range, we have a minimum tire pressure you're allowed to run.
That's the key. It's safety related.
Safety, 100%. And it's not just a recommendation, it's an actual, if you go below that minimum tire pressure, you're out of compliance. You are illegal while competing. If it happens as a mistake...
It's a rule, kids.
Yes.
It's a rule.
If it's, again, it's a mistake and oops, we fell a tiny bit under, you say, that can happen. What IMSA told us was this was not a mistake. This was a concerted effort to cheat.
To conceal.
Yes, to conceal. I was going to say conceive. That's the wrong C word, but we'll leave that there. So you and I, having walked up and down the paddock here, having spoken with a lot of people, had a lot of folks either come ask us questions, some come tell us things. We've heard some interesting items.
Yeah.
I feel comfortable in mentioning some of them. I will leave some others out of the conversation, at least until we can get more forms of confirmation.
Single source, not the wise way to go for this. Yeah.
Things that we are comfortable in saying are etched in truthiness was the number 60 Meyershank Racing Acura, the only GTP car to run during the Rolex 24 with its tire pressures below Michelin's minimum? No. I have learned of another car that has, and I would say 100% factual.
Yep.
There were 2 cars at minimum. I have heard a third, and I am now trying to get additional forms of confirmation there. I'm comfortable in saying, and this is not taking any blame away from Meyershank Racing, they intentionally cheated. Heard that there was another team that did as well. Again, whether that was cheating or just being below, being a little not as observant as they should, can't tell you. Another item that I have now had confirmed multiple ways. We read in the penalty issuance from IMSA that Honda Performance Development alerted IMSA to this non-compliance with the number 60 car.
Something we talked about on the podcast that week.
That we do on our weekly The Week in Sports Cars podcast. Funnily enough, we
listen
do it
to it now, kids.
Well. Knowing that this is a fact, that HPD said, we have looked through the data and we can tell you that one of our teams has not competed above board and fairly during the race. We will leave names out, but I have no question as to whether there was another entity that alerted HPD to that non-compliance. Would also say that a lot of the conversations I have taken part in, a lot of the phone calls and texts I've received since that penalty came out, Graham, This is both from the IMSA paddock, also, funnily enough, a lot in the IndyCar paddock, saying there's no way this could have been a single person, because there was one person blamed.
Absolutely.
Hard card stripped, fired by the team. Hard to think of how it could be one person having done this. We're not going to get into sources, but I can tell you I have since spoken with enough people to feel confident in saying, I believe that. Now, there's a difference though in saying there's one person who did all of these things by themselves in a clandestine way. To pull this off, you would have to include others. Hey, person in charge of setting the tire pressures, want you to set the pressures at such. Do you explain to them, and I have a nefarious plan? Or do you just simply say,
do it.
Hey, want you to go to this number?
Yep.
That's a pretty common thing.
Yep.
Crew members are accustomed to receiving instructions
and
acting upon them without really pushing back or asking questions from either a chief mechanic, chief engineer, etc. You would likely inform the drivers. Hey, the car might be moving around a little bit on cold tires when you leave the pits, or if you're out there trying to conserve energy, tire temperatures might not be all the way up. Would you tell them, because I've chosen to do this thing that is out of compliance? You don't necessarily have to do that. So, just to close here, there's no question that this was done, no question that this was hatched as a plan knowingly by the former technical director that contravened the rules and has gotten them into pretty hot water. But I have tried to get the one answer that folks have been asking. This couldn't have been one person. This couldn't have been a single person in the book depository, right? Had to be someone on the grassy knoll involved. From what I am getting, I'm hearing that while others might have been brought into this without their knowledge of what they were being asked to do or of this master plan, I do keep hearing it was a single person.
I think that's the key point here, isn't it? There's little doubt from the penalties we saw assessed, for the language that's been used since then in conversation and in not necessarily briefing in a formal fashion, but also with that kind of behaviour. There was a message being delivered here, not just to Meyershank Racing, but to everybody, okay? This is not something they're going to let go a second time. This is not something that's going to be let go a second time. It's a message delivery system, the penalty that's been delivered against this infraction. And yes, there is surprise being expressed that perhaps a disqualification didn't come alongside that. That is not, as we discussed on the Weekend Sports Cars, the IMSA, the NASCAR way. But little doubt in my mind that there's a hard line being drawn here and that these teams will have had some of the required telling off or talking to from absolutely everybody involved in the upper echelons of IMSA.
So let's say farewell with just a quick note on wrapping this Meyershank Racing IMSA penalty Rolex 24 thing. The last piece of information you and I have received is everything has been assessed. It's done. The slate is clean. You may be parking your transporters a little later than you want, but the slate is clean. Let's move forward. Now, is there going to be a watchful eye placed on everything they do? Of course. Are they going to go out and lead sessions and win the race? I don't know if that's in your best interest if you really want to get caught and then go. But all I'm getting at here, Graham, is the reason we're mentioning this on a Wednesday so that we can get into the rest of the event where IMSA's on track is to cover this off, because what we're hearing is we're not happy, but it's done. Slate's clean. Let's move forward. Brand new event. That's behind us.
Yep. As we were just talking, by the way, one of the good news stories of the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship here in the 12 Hours of Sebring, a brand new look for AO Racing. I've just seen a 150 mile an hour dinosaur passing by, the 911 GT3. Rawr.
Yes, did a little video with that with Gunnar Jeanette, so I'll get that up here shortly.
The Gunnosaurus Rex.
All right, so bit of a long weekend opening, end of day video, even though it's only 2 o'clock, but got a lot of video content coming this weekend. I'm Marshall Pruett, that's Graham Goodwin. We will speak to you here soon on Racer.